And welcome to another edition of the New Sports Outlaws podcast. As always, I am Neil and this is Dan. Dan, we're down to the last week in the NFL. So, really, all we do is summarize what's going on right now heading into the playoffs, talk about how bad the Giants screwed up their future, and start totally pivoting toward basketball. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, good. Happy New Year's Eve. Last episode. I know I said this last time. I didn't think we'd be doing the episode today, but yeah, this is definitely the last episode of 2024. A little lighter on the sports, but we got some NFL headlines, got some playoff possibilities, and we got a lot of Knicks. And we don't need to talk about the Giants and the Nets or anything like that, but I know Neil will want to get into that. But yeah, let's get started.
Yeah. We'll start with the NFL, and there's really not much to play for. I mean, obviously, the most intriguing thing going into Week 18 has got to be the playoff scenario for the couple teams that still have anything to play for. Now, the NFC has very little to play for. There's one thing going on, whereas if Minnesota wins, they are the one seed, and then nothing else really matters except for the division matchup between Tampa Bay and Atlanta. Tampa Bay wins, they are the division winners. If they lose and Atlanta loses, uh, um, they are still the division winners. I'm sorry. And then Atlanta needs to win and have a Tampa loss to get into the playoffs. So NFC, not too much more to play for. What are you thinking about the playoffs going in for the NFC?
Vikings Lions. Crazy that to 14-2 teams are playing, and a 14-3 team is going to be the 5 seed in the playoffs, which is obviously, I know that's how it works, but still crazy that a 3
Wow.
loss team is a 5 seed. And they're going to be on the road for the first, or is it the better record or is it seeding? I forget. Do you remember?
No, I want to say, I thought it was seeding.
Yeah, I thought so too. I'm just thinking of last year. But yeah, and thinking they're going to be on the road against the 4 seed, which is crazy. Um, I think this would be a really, I mean, I know the Lions, especially lately, Jared Goff has been dominating offensively, and they've been destroying teams offensively, but they've also been getting up with a lot of points. So that's going to be interesting to see how the Vikings, who have a pretty decent defense, along with a pretty explosive offense, like for themselves. I think it's a good matchup for the Vikings. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually won that. And that'll kind of set up an interesting maybe scenario. So if if Tampa wins and the Rams get the 4 seed, it'll kind of set up another last year like Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff playing off against each other in the first round with that 4 or 5 seed. That would make things really interesting. I think that could be a danger spot actually for the Lions. But yeah, like you said, in the NFC, not too much to talk about besides the divisions. We talk about Rams. They can move up if Tampa Bay loses. So I think the Rams can get the 3 seed if Tampa Bay loses. And I guess the Falcons would have to win. I think they would get the 4 seed and the Rams would get the 3rd seed. But yeah, all the teams are kind of in. We're just kind of worried about, I guess, like you said, the biggest one to see who gets that first round bye and who gets to rest most of their players the next week, going into next week.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, as much as it sounded like it is, obviously, I read up on it, you follow it. When you're talking about it, it sounds like there's a lot, but there's really not a lot in the NFC as in comparison to the AFC. AFC still got a lot going on as far as at least moving parts with only 1 or 2 spots. So Baltimore, if they win, they automatically get the 3 seed. If they lose, and Pittsburgh wins, Pittsburgh will be the 3 seed. Pittsburgh needs to win and have Baltimore lose for them to get the 3 seed. Denver's got to win. If Denver's win, they are in. But here's where it gets tricky. If they don't win, then it's going to depend on what Miami and Cincinnati do. If Miami wins and Denver loses, Miami's in. If Miami loses and Denver loses and Cincinnati wins, Cincinnati's in. So the only one that could back in is Denver. Otherwise, the other 2 teams need to win and get help.
Yeah. You kind of summed it up. It's pretty much fight for that seventh and last spot. And it just be kind of go on what KC wants to do. You think Kansas City's going to want to rest most of their guys against Denver, but you don't know if Kansas City's going to want really 2 weeks off because they have the 1 seed. Maybe they'll play their guys for a half and then see what maybe rest them for the second half. But I think that's going to be the deciding factor because obviously if KC's playing their guys, I mean, you never know, but they're probably going to beat Denver. The Dolphins have the Jets that you would think that should be an easy win, you would think. Um, and then we have Cincinnati also, which could sneak in, like you said. So, I mean, I think the Dolphins are in a pretty good spot here. I know that'll make our friend Rocco happy, but
Yeah.
I think the Dolphins are in a pretty good spot here. Um, they got to take care of business and hope KC does them a favor.
Yep. And well, I mean, although Cincinnati plays Saturday night, the pressure is not totally off Denver because they also have Miami breathing down their necks. But Cincinnati, if they lose Saturday night, they take themselves totally out of the equation, and then it'll just be between Cincinnati and Miami. So the next headline, NFL intriguing section to me, also corresponds to our local team here. And my next topic I wanted to talk to you about was the NFL first pick and the scenarios right now. And there's so much, so I really only focused on the top four. The Pats right now own the number one pick. If they lose to the Bills, they are the number one pick. But the Bills have nothing to play for. The Bills are the number two seed. They are locked into two seed. There's nothing they can do to catch the Chiefs, and there's nothing they can do to lose and go lower than two. The Browns are playing the Ravens, and we already discussed that the Ravens need to win to win their division and get the three seed as opposed to being a wild card. The Titans versus the Texans, again, another scenario like the Bills, where the Texans have locked up the four. There's nothing they can do to be three, and they will not lose that division. So they are locked in at four. And then you have, of course, the Giants at Philadelphia. The only thing Philly might be playing for is getting Saquon that record, which, I mean, if you listen to WFAN like I have a lot today already, is it's up in the air. Sirianni still has not said if he's going to play Saquon. If he plays, how long does he play for? Are they going to focus and try to get him 100 yards in the first half? Who knows? Anybody could see the Giants winning this game and screwing their pickup even more than they already have.
Can the Giants? I'm assuming the Giants can move further back if they
Yes.
somehow get another win.
I want to say they've done scenarios where they could finish as low as like 8 or 9.
Okay. So I mean, to me at this point, they can't assume this, but there's not really too much of a crazy difference between 4, I guess, and 8 or 9 or whatever, because obviously
Essentially, you
what the
still lose a
Giants are looking
quarterback.
for. Obviously Giants are looking for a quarterback. Um, I think there's absolutely no um question that Sirianni's going to play Saquon Barkley for at least a half and get his 105 yards. He's an a-hole. We all know it. This team knows it. And especially, I mean, they're not at the Giants, but they're going to have to prove a point. And you know, Barkley, he'll be the nice guy. He's a professional guy. He's going to say, if they want me to play, I'll play. If they don't want me to play, I'll sit out. He, you, he wants it. I'm sure he wants the record, and especially to his old team. At least I would think so. I mean, especially with Sirianni, because I think we kind of know his personality by now, and I think he'll definitely want to put him out there at least for the half, and then see where he's at. Maybe if he doesn't get 100, I think it's 105 yards he needs by halftime. Um, yeah, it's basically it was tough for the Giants to kind of get that win, and it kind of puts into limbo if it's like what they're doing quarterback wise. I think they should still keep their head coach. I know we talked about last week how it could be put in question if they don't draft a quarterback. Why keep Dayball and Shane around? But I think they're still worth keeping. And obviously they're going to look to sign a free agent quarterback, whether they're going to throw money at Darnold or get one of the Pittsburgh quarterbacks with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. But obviously they're going to be signing a quarterback no matter what. And I think Dable needs to get a chance to work with him.
Yeah, I think the signing of the quarterback is going to depend on obviously where they finish. If they get lucky and can finish in this top two or top three here,
That's
could
possible.
could they if they draft Cam or Shador? I would assume they're starting from day one. Maybe they'd bring in a Tyrod Taylor level, like that type of level backup, or even a Drew Lock again that they could see starting for 2 to 5 games if they want to give the kid a little time to learn the playbook. But I don't know that they're going to be in like a Sam Darnold sweepstakes where he could get close to $50 million a year because it smells, although he looked awesome with Minnesota this year. That smells like Daniel Jones off a playoff victory, and then giving him all that money, and then just get yourself lambasted. For years. The only difference here would be they are drafting a quarterback, ideally in this draft, to sit behind that person. Yeah, it was bad. I mean, listen, I think if you're a sane Giant fan, listen to Christmas Monaco on the radio, and it was tough to see Drew Lock play like that. My first initial reaction is really, really. We finally have the number one pick, and you know me, I don't like Shador, and I've been more on the Cam Ward bandwagon. But like the consensus is, as of right now, Shador is going to be the first pick in the draft. I'm not a huge Shador fan, but you also could have leveraged that pick and said, "Oh, Raiders, if you want him, we could swap." Or whatever the scenario was, get the pick, and then worry about getting value or what you're going to do. To see Drew Lock do that, it's like, my first reaction is, damn, he screwed the pick. My second reaction is, dude, where was this? If he could run your offense, Brian, why did it take until now, when we have the number one draft pick locked up, to you go out there and do what you did? I will say, I heard on the radio, I want to say it was this morning, I might have been listening to Jerry and Willie Colon on WFN this morning, and they were going through the quarterbacks drafted first overall, and it's not been good. It has been atrocious since dating back to like the Eli and Peyton days, as far as quarterbacks drafted first and what they've done with their franchises. I mean, yeah, okay, you have a couple instances where they at least made it, a couple instances where they made it to the Super Bowl, but there's many more first round overall picks that either are busts or look like complete busts.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't listen like you did, but I'm going to assume that obviously people with the first pick don't have the greatest coaching in place. In terms of, we can talk about the Bears from this year. You could talk about Kyler Murray, even from years back. I know we had Cliff Kingsbury, but they got rid of him real quick. I think it took some time, even the one I'm going to go far back now, but even like Peyton Manning from a long time. It took him a long time for him to get there. I think Troy Aikman, also a number one pick, I think he actually finished his first year with Dallas. I want to say 1-15. I want to say it was his very first year.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know nowadays nobody wants to wait or anything. And obviously they see Jaden Daniels, who's flourishing. They see CJ Stroud, even though he's maybe kind of regressed a little bit this year, maybe because of his receiver injuries or whatever. But CJ Stroud, they see him flourish. Bo Nix has looked well. So
Drake Mays look good.
Drake May's had his spots where he's looked good, which gives it interesting for the Patriots if they get the number one pick. Whether it's Travis Hunter, they're going to have like a Chicago Bears where they trade everybody. One of those situations.
Yep.
Where they trade the farm to get, I forgot who was the team they traded with. I'm totally blanking.
Carolina.
Yeah, for the Bryce Young. Yeah, they traded their number one pick. They got 3 number one picks for Bryce Young, which is great for them.
And a player
and DJ Moore.
Second, yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that obviously New England has, unless they're totally in love with Travis Hunter. I think that's probably a route they're going to go in. But yeah, it's going to it needs time, no matter what. It's just not everyone's going to be. It's a quarterback. It's the most important position. You can't just throw somebody in there and expect them to succeed all the time. That's all I'm saying.
So we'll see how the Giants screw up their pick this week. So playoffs, first pick overall, mixed in with the playoffs and first pick. There's a lot of scenarios where what is your argument? What are your feelings on, if you have nothing to play for? Do you err on the side of caution and say, with teams like Philly, I'm not getting even my backup quarterback hurt. I need Kenny Pickett just in case Jalen Hurts gets hurt in a playoff game. If you're the Bills, I don't need a freak injury for Josh Allen rolling out of the pocket in week 18 when he can't do anything for our playoff status. Go sit down and don't even look at the field. I don't want you getting hurt. Or James Cook. I don't want to just use quarterbacks as examples, but what is your opinion? What do you stand if you were a coach? You're rooting for a team that's getting ready for playoffs, since neither of ours are. Do you want your players to play? Or do you want them to sit and be safe?
if there's nothing to play for and you got a playoff game next week, you kind of have to sit him. You got to give him that little bit of a break. It is we do have 1 week longer, so it is obviously an extra game for them, an extra week of prep, an extra wear and tear on their bodies. Unless it's a team like the Chiefs who have the number 1 seed, I might want to play the starters just for the half or even 3/4, just to kind of so they're not getting 2 full weeks off of game time. I definitely want to play, like, say, if the Chiefs. Obviously, it doesn't apply for the NFC because they're playing for the division, but the Chiefs definitely. I think I would play a little bit of Mahomes and all that for maybe a half. The other ones, I'm more inclined to sit them just because you worked all year for this opportunity. And for someone like Josh Allen to be hurt on such a useless play on week 18, I think would be devastating for them, especially Josh Allen. I know we talked about James Cook and all that, but Josh Allen, if he's out, it's obviously over.
Game over.
James
Yeah.
Cook, I know there's other running backs. I know who's really good, but Josh Allen, it's definitely the quarterback. So I'm more if you have absolutely nothing to play for, sit until next week.
In most teams' cases that we're looking at playoff teams, it would be devastating to
It
lose
does, yeah.
a
Oh, yeah.
RB1 or a wide receiver one, but as long as the QB1 doesn't go down, you got a shot to still win a game or two in the playoffs. Okay, so playoffs, first pick, starting or not starting your players if your team was headed to the playoffs. Just a quick check in on the Jets. They're absolute dumpster fire joke. Here's where, if my editing skills were really good, I'd have a trash bin with the Jets floating down the river. But they're also, again, the news breaking today and yesterday and today. Rex Ryan is going to interview for the job for coach. Ron Rivera is already scheduled to come in and interview for a job. Whatever happened to hiring your GM and then letting your GM do it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, isn't Mike McCagnon and this consulting firm that the Jets hired or Woody Johnson hired supposed to help with that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, they're just a dumpster fire. I don't even know. And there's things that Aaron Rodgers. I heard there was a story that I think when they were down like 34-0 against the Bills, and Aaron Rodgers is like, I think it's time for me to come out or something like that. And I think he said like the next play they scored a touchdown. It was like 41-0, and then they decided not to put him in, and Tyrod Taylor was in the rest of the game. I think I think he needs to be off the team. I don't care if his stats were good. He just seems like he's not good for the team. You got your star receiver, Garrett Wilson, that may want out. I mean, Devontae's there for the short term. Garrett Wilson could be there for the long term.
But
I know he had a decent year numbers wise. He needs to get out. But yeah, GM search, they need you.
We are so minorly in the media outlet, but it's so great to have him here for all the content he brings.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was part of the reason why you bring him here. I mean, you say, oh, he's going to give us a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Off the field.
Again, the only way I can even envision him coming back is if you're bringing in one of those veteran coaches. You should be bringing in the GM first. But even if that GM brings in a Rex Ryan, a Mike Vrabel, whatever, and they say, I don't want to worry about offense, just bring Rodgers back and let's get a different offensive mind in here and let's get this offense rolling. I don't even know Breece Hall played football this year. I know I was high on him, but I was not the only one. There were thousands of analysts that were like, he's going to supplant CMC as the best fantasy running back. Do you even know if he played this year? Because I know there was like a week or two where he was good and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, Garrett Wilson too. Garrett Wilson in our fantasy thing went number 8 in our fantasy league. So it's between Breece Hall, then the Jets went what? Breece Hall probably went 4 or 5 in our league, and it's just crazy how Breece Hall, who was supposed to be the RB2, I guess maybe this year, or RB3, Bijan and CMC. I'll leave it up to you, fantasy guy. Look up where Breece actually finished the year because he's up there with
I want to say he
Tyreek
finished
Hill.
at like running back 30 or something like that.
He's up there with Tyreek Hill as probably the most disappointing fantasy player this year.
Yeah, and Tyreek Hill, even with the hot finishes, I think right now at like wide receiver 18, which is not terrible, the number, but like he was drafted the best wide receiver in fantasy football.
Yeah, which is like fourth, fifth round. I want to say we'll say RB18 or whatever it is, but yeah, it's been a struggle for the Jets, and I don't even know how you fix it. You obviously got to hire GM, but they're hiring coaches first. I don't even know what to do with them.
Yeah. Yeah, so just quick check in, and if you have anything you want to interject here, I haven't seen nothing on the baseball front. There's been rumors a little bit about Pete Alonso. The Giants might be interested now, but that's the only thing I remember hearing in the last day or two, and even trying to think back and date back if we've heard anything even rumor related for the Yankees. I heard there's Jack Curry saying there was a source inside the Yankees that told him that the Yankees are going to pass on Nolan Arenado. I'm not upset with that either. But what does that mean? Does that mean it's Bregman or you're doing an internal search? Is there anybody maybe out there on the horizon we're not thinking about? But I mean, internal searches, you'd have to think Peraza or DJ, or Chisholm. Um, you know what I mean? So it obviously I'd rather have Jazz play second, but I guess the option is still always there. He could play third, and you could put Peraza at second. But in that matter, if Jazz is a better second baseman, let Peraza go play third and let Jazz play second.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in a little bit of a dead zone with the baseball stuff now. We had all the winter meetings, we had all the early fireworks. I think we'll still be a couple weeks, maybe until that pitcher Sasaki signs on like the 15th of January or wherever he tells us he's going to go to. But yeah, with Arenado, I still think he's kind of in play as long we'll see if St. Louis they're going to have to convince St. Louis to take like a majority of his contract.
Yeah.
I don't see at least. I mean, we're not going to be taking the majority of his contract. I think he only has 3 years left. Obviously, he's making a lot of money, but he needs to. They need to convince St. Louis to pay the money. But yeah, we have between Peraza, Cabrera, we have a lot of options. Obviously, it's not all the fancy, glitzy options that Yankee fans are used to, but I'm okay with. I mean, if Peraza can hit a little better, we obviously know his fielding is great. Um, Jazz, I think, is more of a second baseman, even though he did pretty. I know he had his errors, but he did play pretty well for just being thrown to third base and say, "Go learn it." And I thought he did pretty well there. But I think he'll be in second. Obviously, Gleyber Torres, we didn't talk about that. He signed with the Tigers. And yeah, we have some options, and I'm okay with going with the young guys. Obviously, if we're able to make the big splashy, obviously Arenado's a star. I mean, but he wouldn't. They definitely would need to keep us on the contract, but we'll see as it goes on, and we'll see what we see.
Yeah, I think the Yankees would, even if they say they're not interested in Nolan, if St. Louis were to be like, hey, we'll take 100% of his contract, just send us like a B-level prospect, I think the Yankees might jump all over it because they know that it's probably that, or they're going to end up starting DJ or Peraza at third base. Okay, so I wanted to finish our podcast today with a very positive theme. So is there anything you want to say about the Nets before we go to Knicks?
No, they made a trade, traded away Dorian Finney-Smith, ball
Tell
back.
us, no, that brings me to a good point because I know we talk about it because it happened after the last podcast. But what does that do for the Nets? Talk specifically.
Basically brought back to as in Kenny Atkinson age from D'Angelo Russell back to Brooklyn. 3 second-round picks. The main thing here out of this, I'm not even worried about that, is if I think Cam Johnson to be the next one, and all of a sudden he's out there looking for multiple first-round picks, but I don't know if they want to trade him. I'm not sure they really want to trade him, and I mean, the only reason we would trade him is so that obviously the Nets just go tank all the way down to top whatever. Because I mean, are the Nets going to really want to trade it for kind of the same way that we did with the Knicks? Give 5 first-round picks, but they're mostly going to be mid to late picks for the most part for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Or same thing, it would be the same thing if we traded him because no like non-contender is going to trade for Cam Johnson. You're not going to get like a random team in the lottery that's going to trade for Cam Johnson. So it's going to be a contender. It's going to be 3 years again. That's going to be in the 20s again if we really want to do that. I'm not sure we want to do that. So, I mean, it's just, I think he's a matter of time. I think we are end up going to trade Cam Johnson, and I think we're going to have to trade D'Angelo Russell by the trade deadline also. Just going to accumulate picks and, see what happens from there.
Yep. I mean, listen, Cam should get you a minimum a first, two firsts, something like that. Obviously, from IBO perspective,
I hope so.
an independent
Had
basketball
a
observer,
fantastic year.
there's not as much pub around him as was Mikal Bridges, who, like we said last pod, has looked better the last month. But I know, being even an independent basketball observer, that the games I've watched for the Nets, he's your whole offense. Really, he can go to a playoff bound team, even if he were to be asked to anchor a second unit and be able to score off the bench. No, but I'm saying like a solid team, like uh not Boston, but like somebody Boston-esque, or what about the Thunder if they wanted some scoring off the bench? Somebody like that, like the Thunder have a solid starting five. Even though Cam Johnson is really, really good, maybe they would look at him and be like, yeah, you're going to be our sixth man. You're going to come off the bench and lead that second unit and give us 10, 12 points off the bench every game.
Yeah, I think the thing with we're seeing a lot of stats before we go on to the Knicks is just we see like Schroeder, who was our obviously main point guard and did most of the creation, and his numbers were a little inflated because he literally carried him and Cam Johnson and Cam Thomas when he was healthy, carried that whole offense, and he had like 18 points a game. But you can't expect him on the Warriors to now score 18 points a game when you have Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and you have a couple other guys over there. So he's not going to score 18. So a lot of this is a little inflated. Cam Johnson's not going to score 20 a game somewhere else. He's scoring 20 a game right now, but he's not going to score that somewhere else.
No. But like I said, good team. Maybe he comes off the bench and leads the second unit. Okay, so to a
Yeah.
team that has their sights on the number 2 overall ranking in the Eastern Conference. The New York Knicks are only half a game behind the Boston Celtics. They are 9-1 in their last 10. They've won 8 in a row since that cup debacle in Atlanta. They have what you would consider an easier game tomorrow against the Jazz on New Year's Day. And then on Friday, I think is a very big test, litmus test, as they call it. I don't think they need to win, but they need to show that they can take this team toe to toe, and it is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, they've looked impressive. I think they've taken advantage of the schedule. Definitely, I've been think out of all the games we've seen or talked about, I don't think we've seen really one challenging. Maybe against the Spurs on Christmas, but again, they're still only a 500 team. But yeah, I think they have. It's good, and I know I talked about this last podcast that they have so many guys that can go off on a particular day. Like for example, we'll take the last 2 Washington games. They were about to. They were actually close both Washington games, but in that first game, Brunson had to go for 55, and Towns went for 30, and they almost ended up losing that game. They won in overtime. But then the second game, I think Brunson really struggled that second Washington game, and Josh Hart had a triple double. And on Christmas, we talked about Mikal Bridges having 41 points out of just
Yep.
really nowhere. And you know, OG's had that time. I know OG early in the year had like 30-point games early in the year. The only thing is with the Knicks, and they need to add, is they got to pray that nobody gets hurt because their depth is atrocious. I don't care how good Deuce McBride is and Precious Princess Achua over there and
Campaign.
Campaign over there and Landry Shamet all of a sudden coming off the bench. So they got to hope that nobody gets hurt on this team because they're all playing 40 minutes. I look
Mitchell.
at their minutes. Get out of here. He'll be out after a month. You know that. Get out of here. So that's the only thing that's derailing the Knicks right now. If everybody stays healthy, they're right there with the Boston Celtics as the best starting 5 in the NBA. And I think they're kind of destined, at least for right now, it's early, for that Eastern Conference Finals matchup.
I hope so, because that's exactly what I predicted in our NBA predictions, and I don't get a lot of things right. So I would I would like to get that one right. Dan, I got nothing else today. I mean, it's a short podcast, but it's not that short considering how little of sports has given us outside all the NFL stuff.
Yeah, so obviously we're gonna probably do our last picks on Friday. I'm assuming, so we'll do our
We'll do some
last Week
playoff picks.
18 NFL picks, which are usually a little tricky because people are kind of tanking.
Yeah.
So then the next week, we'll probably do our playoff predictions. We can do a few minute segment on that. yeah, hopefully we'll have some, maybe some, I don't think we're gonna have a lot of baseball for a while, but I think we'll have some baseball. We'll have a lot more Knicks to talk about. Um, maybe get some. I know Rangers in there a little bit. I know they're still kind of tanking in the gutter a little bit, but yeah, um, yeah. We got basically it's a new year, 2025. A lot to look forward to. A lot more podcasts to do. This is going to be our first kind of full year, kind of starting it, which is a
Yes.
good for us. We're having a great time doing it. Yeah. Even though we didn't talk about it a lot, took up a lot of time doing it.
Yep. And it locks you into our fantasy league. You can't quit now that you're doing a sports podcast. You have to stay
No,
involved in
you just had
fantasy.
to get on the internet, didn't you? You just had to put it out there, just so on December 31st, Danny, you said you were going to quit, and now you can't quit anymore, Danny. All
All
right,
right. Sign us
so
off, kid.
yeah, all right, so sign us off. So basically, keep following us, subscribing, Instagram, X, YouTube, getting the followers up, get the comments up. Love to bring those comments onto the podcast. So goodbye, 2024, on to 2025. Danny, this is Neil, signing off.